Okay. So Sean Corneli, have we got everybody in here? Okay. So welcome to day 4, folks. We're entering the last half of the summit. Whoa, going fast, eh? How are we feeling?
We feel good.
Dude?
We feel so good.
Yes. Okay, how did we do last night? How did we do last night on our 3 things? Are we starting to make headway? Hey, we got a bunch of people that did a whole bunch of got their photos done. Mentors, how did we do in our group discussions? Are we moving forward? Are we starting to get some traction here? Andrea? Oh, way to go. Key 2 words. Okay, so one of the desirables in the summit is to establish an organizational structure that'll take responsibility for carrying forward the thoughts, the plans, the actions of this summit, and to keep the momentum moving forward for maybe future summits. Now, sitting in front of you, you have some details of an organizational structure that we need to start putting together. Okay? And what I ask you to do is to look at this and to read this, read the details, and look and say, is this something that I would like to be involved with? Would I be interested in carrying this forward to the next step? Would I be interested in helping keep this whole momentum going? And if you are, think about this, because there'll be a bit of commitment to be done here. Then bring forward your name. And we need to have the names by 6 o'clock tonight. On the back of them, see, turn over. On where you are. If you got it in at 6, it'll be done by 7, won't it? Okay, so 7 o'clock then. Okay, in by 7 o'clock. In before we start our evening session. Fair enough? And then we'll start moving towards elections for tomorrow. Fair enough? So, take this serious. We need to have the right organizational structure, and Derek Rusdebo will be carrying through that forward because he's the chair of the post-summit committee. Fair enough? Now, this is day 4. This is Sustainability Day. This is Cargill Day. Thank you, Cargill. We have with us Lawrence Stone, and we have Bridget Burgoyne from Cargill, and they're going to be joining us all day. And Lauren's going to be speaking to us here in a few minutes, and we'll give a little more on that. But thank you very much, Cargill, for your day. Important day as we're moving forward here. It's a great day on Sustainability Day to experience the wonderful world that we live in, right? It's also a great day to focus our efforts on how we're going to ensure that we keep it a wonderful world, and a wonderful world for our agricultural industry and future generations of our industry. And that's what the focus is on. And to get us into the right mood, I thought we might need to pause for just a minute and watch a BBC Wonderful World situation. So you're on there, Matt.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright, blessed days, dark, sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colours of a rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them purr. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Quite simply wonderful.
Isn't it a wonderful world? Wow. And I think we have a wonderful morning planned for you as well. We have 4 presentations this morning. 2 of them are electronic, and 2 of them are in person. We're starting off with Jason Clay of the World Wildlife Fund. We're then moving to an in-person with Jeff Fitzpatrick Stillwell of McDonald's Restaurants. Then we have Lawrence Stone of Cargill. And then we're going to close off with Alan Savory, an electronics presentation with Alan Savory. So we've got our work cut out for us this morning. And the first presentation is with Jason Clay. Now, Jason Clay is with the World Wildlife Fund. And I think we wanted to play, this is a 17-minute TED Talk presentation on how big brands can help save diversity. And where you're going to see, this is the foundation of many of the sustainability roundtables that are now being developed and what we're doing to move things forward. And we thought that this would put everything in the right perspective as we're starting to look at sustainability. Fair? So, enjoy this presentation from Jason Clay. Matt, you're on.
I grew up on a small farm in Missouri. We lived on less than $1 a day for about 15 years. I got a scholarship, went to university, studied international agriculture, studied anthropology, and decided I was going to give back. I was going to work with small farmers. I was going to help alleviate poverty. I was going to work on international development. And then I took a turn and ended up here. Now, if you get a PhD and you decide not to teach, you don't always end up in a place like this. It's a choice. You might end up driving a taxi cab. You could be in New York. What I found was I started working with refugees and famine victims, small farmers, all, or nearly all, who had been dispossessed and displaced. Now, what I'd been trained to do was methodological research on such people. So I did it. I found out how many women had been raped en route to these camps. I found out how many people had been put in jail, how many family members had been killed. I assessed how long they were going to stay and how much it would take to feed them. And I got really good at predicting how many body bags you would need for the people who were going to die in these camps. Now, this is God's work, but it's not my work. It's not the work I set out to do. So I was at a Grateful Dead benefit concert on the rainforest. 1988. I met a guy, the guy on the left. His name was Ben. He said, "What can I do to save the rainforest?" I said, "Well, Ben, what do you do?" "I make ice cream." So I said, "Well, you've got to make a rainforest ice cream. And you've got to use nuts from the rainforest to show that forests are worth more as forests than they are as pasture." He said, "Okay." Within a year, Rainforest Crunch was on the shelves. It was a great success. We did our first $1 million worth of trade by buying on 30 days and selling on 21. That gets your adrenaline going. Then we had a $4.5 million line of credit because we were credit worthy at that point. We had 15 to 20, maybe 22% of the global Brazil nut market. We paid 2 to 3 times more than anybody else. Everybody else raised their prices to the gatherers of Brazil nuts because we would buy it otherwise. A great success. 50 companies signed up, 200 products came out, generated 100 million in sales. It failed. Why did it fail? Because the people who were gathering Brazil nuts weren't the same people who were cutting the forest. And the people who made money from Brazil nuts were not the people who made money from cutting the forest. We were attacking the wrong driver. We needed to be working on beef. We needed to be working on lumber. We needed to be working on soy, things that we were not focused on. So let's go back to Sudan. I often talk to refugees. Why was it that the West didn't realize that famines are caused by policies and politics, not by weather? And this farmer said to me one day something that was very profound. He said, "You can't wake a person who's pretending to sleep." Okay? Fast forward. We live on a planet. There's just one of them. We've got to wake up to the fact that we don't have any more, and that this is a finite planet. We know the limits of the resources we have. We may be able to use them differently. We may have some innovative new ideas, but in general, this is what we got. There's no more of it. There's a basic equation that we can't get away from. Population times consumption has got to have some kind of relationship to the planet. Our work shows that we're living at about 1.3 planets. Since 1990, we crossed the line of being in a sustainable relationship to the planet. Now we're at 1.3. If we were farmers, we'd be eating our seed. For bankers, we'd be living off the principal, not the interest. This is where we stand today. A lot of people like to point to someplace else as the cause of the problem. It's always population growth. Population growth is important, but it's also about how much each person consumes. So when the average American consumes 43 times as much as the average African, we've got to think that consumption is an issue. It's not just about population, and it's not just about them, it's about us. But it's not just about people, it's about lifestyles. There's very good evidence, again, we don't necessarily have a peer-reviewed methodology that's bulletproof yet, but there's very good evidence that the average cat in Europe has a larger environmental footprint in its lifetime than the average African. You think that's not an issue going forward? You think that's not a question we should be using the Earth's resources. Let's go back and visit our equation. In 2000, we had 6 billion people on the planet. They were consuming what they were consuming, let's say 1 unit of consumption each. We have 6 billion units of consumption. By 2050, we're going to have 9 billion people. All the scientists agree. They're all going to scientists again agree, because income is going to grow in developing countries 5 times what it is today. On global average, about 1.9. So we're going to have 18 billion units of consumption. Who have you heard talking lately that said we have to triple production of? But that's what the math says. We're not going to be able to do that. We can get productivity up, we can get efficiency up, but we've also got to get consumption down. We need to use less to make more. And then we need to use less again, and then we need to consume less. All of those things are part of that equation. But it basically raises a fundamental question. Should consumers have a choice about sustainability, about sustainable products? Should you be able to buy a product that's sustainable sitting next to one that isn't? Or should all the products on the shelf be sustainable? If they should all be sustainable on a finite planet, how do you make that happen? The average consumer takes 1.8 seconds in the US, okay, so let's be generous, let's say it's 3.5 seconds in Europe. How do you evaluate all the scientific data around a product, the data that's changing on a weekly, if not daily basis? How do you get informed? You don't. Here's a little question. From a greenhouse gas perspective, is lamb produced in the UK better than lamb produced in New Zealand, frozen and shipped to the UK? Is a bad feeder lot operation for beef better or worse than a bad grazing operation for beef? Do organic potatoes actually have fewer toxic chemicals used to produce them than conventional potatoes? In every single case, the answer is it depends. It depends on who produced it and how. In every single instance, and there are many others. How is a consumer going to walk through this minefield? They're not. They may have a lot of opinions about it, but they're not going to be terribly informed. Sustainability has got to be a pre-competitive issue. It's got to be something we all care about. And we need collusion. We need groups to work together that never have. We need Cargill to work with Bunge. We need Coke to work with Pepsi. We need Oxford to work with Cambridge. We need Greenpeace to work with WWF. Everybody's got to work together, China and the US. We need to begin to manage this planet as if our life depended on it, because it does. It fundamentally does. But we can't do everything. Even if we get everybody working on it, we've got to be strategic. We need to focus on the where, the what, and the who. So the where. We've identified 35 places globally that we need to work. These are the places that are the richest in biodiversity and the most important from an ecosystem function point of view. We have to work in these places. We have to save these places if we want a chance in hell of preserving biodiversity as we know it. We looked at the threats to these places. These are the 15 commodities that fundamentally pose the biggest threats to these places because of deforestation, soil loss, water use, pesticide use, overfishing, etc. So we've got 35 places. We've got 15 priority commodities. Who do we work with to change the way those commodities are produced? Are we going to work with 6.9 billion consumers? Let's see, that's about 7,000 languages, 350 major languages. A lot of work there. I don't see anybody actually being able to do that very effectively. Are we going to work with 1.5 billion producers? Again, a daunting task. There must be a better way. 300 to 500 companies control 70% or more of the trade of each of the 15 commodities that we've identified as the most significant. If we work with those, if we change those companies in the way they do business, then the rest will happen automatically. So we went through our 15 commodities. This is 9 of them. We line them up side by side, and we put the names of the companies that work on each of those. And if you go through the first 25 or 30 names of each of the commodities, what you begin to see is, gosh, there's Cargill here, there's Cargill there, there's Cargill everywhere. In fact, these names start coming up over and over again. So we did the analysis again a slightly different way. We said, if we take the top 100 companies, what percentage of all 15 commodities do they touch, buy or sell? And what we found is it's 25%. So 100 companies control 25% of the trade of all 15 of the most significant commodities on the planet. We can get our arms around 100 companies. 100 companies we can work with. Why is 25% important? Because if these companies demand sustainable products, they'll pull 40 to 50% of production. Companies can push producers faster than consumers can. By companies asking for this, we can leverage production so much faster than by waiting for consumers to do it. After 40 years, the global organic movement has achieved 0.7 of 1% of global food. We can't wait that long. We don't have that kind of time. We need change that's going to accelerate. Even working with individual companies is not probably going to get us there. We need to begin to work with industries. So we've started roundtables where we bring together the entire value chain, from producers all the way to the retailers and brands. We bring in civil society, we bring in NGOs, we bring in researchers and scientists to have an informed discussion, sometimes a battle royale, to figure out what are the key impacts of these products, what is a global benchmark, what's an acceptable impact, and design standards around that. It's not all fun and games. In salmon aquaculture, we kicked off a roundtable almost 6 years ago. 8 entities came to the table. We eventually got, I think, 60% of production, global production at the table, and 25% of demand at the table. 3 of the original 8 entities were suing each other. And yet, next week, we launch globally verified, vetted, and certified standards for salmon aquaculture. It can happen. So what brings the different entities to the table? It's risk and demand. For the big companies, it's reputational risk, but more importantly, they don't care what the price of commodities is. If they don't have commodities, they don't have a business. They care about availability. So the big risk for them is not having product at all. For the producers, if a buyer wants to buy something produced a certain way, that's what brings them to the table. So it's the demand that brings them to the table. The good news is we identified 100 companies 2 years ago. In the last 18 months, we've signed agreements with 40 of those 100 companies to begin to work with them on their supply chain. And in the next 18 months, we've signed up to work with another 40, and we think we'll get those signed as well. Now what we're doing is bringing the CEOs of these 80 companies together to help twist the arms of the final 20 to bring them to the table, because they don't like NGOs, they've never worked with NGOs, they're concerned about this, they're concerned about that, but we all need to be in this together. So we're pulling out all the stops. We're using whatever leverage we have to bring them to the table. One company we're working with that's begun, in baby steps perhaps, but has begun this journey on sustainability is Cargill. They've funded research that shows that we can double global palm oil production without cutting a single tree in the next 20 years, and do it all in Borneo alone by planting on land that's already degraded. The study shows that the highest net present value for palm oil is on land that's been degraded. They're also undertaking a study to look at all of their supplies of palm oil to see if they could be certified and what they would need to change in order to become third-party certified under a credible certification program. Why is Cargill important? Because Cargill has 20 to 25% of global palm oil. If Cargill makes a decision, the entire palm oil industry moves, or at least 40 or 50% of it. That's not insignificant. More importantly, Cargill and one other company ship 50% of the palm oil that goes to China. We don't have to change the way a single Chinese company works if we get Cargill to only send sustainable palm oil to China. It's a pre-competitive issue. All the palm oil going there is good. Buy it. Mars is also on a similar journey. Now, most people understand that Mars is a chocolate company, but Mars has made sustainability pledges to buy only certified product for all of its seafood. Turns out Mars buys more seafood than Walmart because of pet food. But they're doing some really interesting things around chocolate. And it all comes from the fact that Mars wants to be in business in the future. And what they see is that they need to improve chocolate production. On any given plantation, 20% of the trees produce 80% of the crop. So Mars is looking at the genome. They're sequencing the genome of the cocoa plant. They're doing it with IBM and the USDA, and they're putting it in the public domain because they want everybody to have access to this data, because they want everybody to help them make cocoa more productive and more sustainable. What they realize is that if they can identify the traits on productivity and drought tolerance, they can produce 320% as much cocoa on 40% of the land. The rest of the land can be used for something else. It's more with less and less again. That's what the future has got to be. And putting it in the public domain is smart. Now, the price of food, many people complain about. But in fact, the price of food is going down, and that's odd because, in fact, consumers are not paying for the true cost of food. If you take a look just at water, what we see is that with 4 very common products, you look at how much a farmer produced to make those products, and then you look at how much water input was put into them, and then you look at what the farmer was paid. If you divide the amount of water into what the farmer was paid, the farmer didn't receive enough money to pay a decent price for water in any of those commodities. That is an externality by definition. This is the subsidy from nature. Coca-Cola, they've worked a lot on water, but right now they're entering into 17-year contracts with growers in Turkey to sell juice into Europe. And they're doing that because they want to have a product that's closer to the European market. But they're not just buying the juice. They're also buying the carbon in the trees to offset the shipment costs associated with carbon to get the product into Europe. There's carbon that's being bought with sugar, with coffee, with beef. This is called bundling. It's bringing those externalities back into the price of the commodity. We need to take what we've learned in private voluntary standards of what the best producers in the world are doing and use that to inform government regulation so we can shift the entire performance curve. We can't just focus on identifying the best. We've got to move the rest. The issue isn't what to think. It's how to think. These companies have begun to think differently. They're on a journey. There's no turning back. We're all on that same journey with them. We have to really begin to change the way we think about everything. Whatever was sustainable in a planet of 6 billion is not going to be sustainable on a planet with 9. Thank you.
Did that make you think? What were some of the biggest takeaways that you had from there? Who? What's some of the big takeaways you took? Yes? 100 companies control 25% of the major companies. What are other takeaways? Yes? We can't rely on the governments to do this. We need to go forward ourselves and work with the companies to be able to make it happen. Right? Yes? Think long-term and short-term. Other takeaways? Yes? You can't wake a person that's pretending to sleep. Sustainability should be a pre-competitive issue. Lots of takeaways. The round tables. You start to hear more and more about round tables. We got two major speakers here that they spoke highly of here, leaders that have stepped forward, very active in round tables. Fawn's going to talk to us this afternoon about round tables. Hopefully that was some insights to be able to move forward here. When you think of big brands, nothing is much bigger than McDonald's restaurants. And I've got to know this organization a fair bit in the last few years. And the more I get to know them, the more impressed I become. And we're very, very fortunate to have with us today the Sustainability Manager for McDonald's Restaurants Canada, Jeff Fitzpatrick Stillwell. And Jeff, we invite you to come forward and to give your perspective and to share with the youth here what you're doing in your organization and challenge them to support you and take the next level. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Jeff Fitzpatrick Stillwell.
No, I should be fine with this, yeah. Well, good morning, everyone. I think we're ready to go here. I really think my presentation probably could have been better set up than the video that we just watched before. And McDonald's has worked really closely on a global level with Jason Clay specifically, but also with WWF and some other organizations. But we now have a global partnership with WWF in all 119 countries that we have operations in to do a lot of the stuff that he's talking about. So, I'm not going to have to do too much setup because he pretty much set the whole thing up. And as we go through, I think you'll see for McDonald's a lot of the things that he was talking about come to life for us. So, of course, you've got to have the obligatory slides that talk about the size of the company, and sometimes I think it is good to set that up, especially in a sustainability context, because we're talking about the size of McDonald's, and that obviously has a real impact. So you can see some of the big stats there. I think one of the things, too, that, one of my takeaways from Jason's presentation and working with WWF to date has been, too, is I think we've struggled, and, Lauren might talk to that from Cargill's perspective, too, is that what role do we play when we're talking about sustainability? So we get it from the, we need to do the right thing and all of that good stuff. But when we're interacting with 64 million customers every single day, what's our role directly with them? And I think for a lot of time in the past, we felt that it wasn't our role to talk to customers about these issues because that they wouldn't trust us. They wouldn't believe that McDonald's was the experts in these areas, so what we would try to engage with them on would maybe fall flat. And I think what WWF has really challenged us on is, that 64 million people that you're seeing each and every single day, 365 days a year, there's a real opportunity there to educate them, to bring some of these issues to light for them. So I think we're feeling a little bit more comfortable with that, and working with guidance from great partners like that, I think we're going to move more and more into telling some of these truisms that WWF has come up with and really start engaging those customers that way and help them think differently, and then also be telling them what we're doing about it, so not just telling them a challenge but showing them how we're dealing with it. These are the numbers just specifically for McDonald's Canada. So even in Canada alone, we're seeing, that 2.5 number, it's getting close to 3 million now. So every single day just in Canada, we're interacting with 3 million people. So it's a huge opportunity for us. And so is the crew that work for us. As the generations go on, we have about 85% of our crew are youth. So they're very engaged in this issue. I get many, many emails asking many, many questions about the stuff that they're interacting with in the restaurants each and every day. So I think sort of the theme of maybe my presentation is evolution and talking about where a big global brand like McDonald's moves from. And I use this slide to show the original McDonald's and the original McDonald's menu, and then show that was the 50th anniversary restaurant, to show the evolution of the restaurant experience, the evolution of the menu. It was a tight, small menu back in 1955, and now it's not only a much greater and expanded menu, but there's all different kinds of ways to order and interact. So start talking about the evolution. one of the things, and this goes again about communicating with our customers, is we're really buying into and trying to do more around transparency, authenticity, and again, interacting with customers in a way that they're going to believe is authentic to them. So one of the things actually is a McDonald's Canada initiative. It was called Our Food, Your Questions, and some of the Canadians in the audience may be familiar with it. It was really an opportunity to open up the brand for all of our customers and people who weren't our customers. So it was an online initiative. Ask any question about our food. What do you want to know? What have you heard? There's sawdust in the fries. There's hoofs in the beef. You know, like, ask any question, and we won't send you the form letter response. We're going to address every question individually, which took a mammoth amount of time and energy to do. But it was so incredibly engaging with people that they really, I think, understood in the 21st century, and especially, I mean, the people in this room can speak to that, that you have a much better understanding of how the world works, right? Like, one of the key things, and that's why I put up there, is that Quarter Pounder is one of the main questions we got asked was, why does the picture of your burger when I go into your restaurant or see it on the billboard look like this, and then I open in the box and it doesn't look like that? So instead of maybe 10 years ago we would have said it does look just like that, it's exactly the same. What are you talking about? We said, yeah, well, here's why it doesn't. It's just, and it shows right down there. It takes 60 seconds to make the burger in the restaurant, and in a Photoshop and doing an advertising thing, that image took 4 hours to create. So you're showing the beauty shot. It's the cover of a magazine. So many people in this room are sure have seen the Dove beauty ad where they show the model sitting down and what she looks like, and then over the 60 seconds it shows you how they have a team of makeup people making it beautiful, but then at the end how they Photoshop it so her eyes get bigger, her neck gets taller, her hair gets fuller. So in some way, I mean, you're selling the image, but this generation understands when you see the cover of that magazine that it's selling the image, that she doesn't look exactly like that. But there's an understanding that that's how brands present. They want to present you with this, glorious image, but then you accept that it is going to be different in the thing. I mean, you see the pickles and the ketchup and the stuff at the edge of the burger, but those are put on, in a format of sticking it so you can see it. You're going to want the pickles in the middle of your burger when you eat it, not all pulled to one edge. So it's going to look different. So I think it was hard for some of the senior executives in our company to want to do this because they really feared that people would say, aha, they were used to us saying, no, it's exactly the way that it should be. And the response was so great, and being authentic and transparent was amazing. So you can see there some of the other questions, and they were in bus shelters and subways and everywhere else. So there's just some quick stats on how many things came in during the actual sort of bookends of the initiative. It's still happening now. So right now we're up to about 15 million views on some of the videos, and one of which I'm going to show you today, that we made from some of the most popular questions, including the why does your burger look different one. And we take you in and show you how the Photoshop put some more sesame seeds on, take a few off, depending on how the marketing folks want it to look. So when we get into talking about specific to sustainability, I think this is, again, coming off of WWF. McDonald's footprint is obviously significant. We're in 119 countries, 64 million customers a day. That's a significant impact that we're having on the environment. So there's huge opportunities there, and there's growing expectations from our customers and from people who aren't our customers that we're going to do the right thing. So our vision, it's kind of always been the vision that we've talked about differently, but we've tried to pull it together now, is to really use the scale of our business, the scope of our reach through the agriculture and other areas, and then hopefully the talent that we have within the organization to make a positive difference for the world. So that's kind of a motherhood statement, but I'll get deeper into those. The guiding principles that we use are not going to be a surprise to anybody. We obviously want to focus on the areas that have the highest impact for us. We want to identify ways that we can validate and measure that so that we can report back to not only government agencies and NGOs, but our customers, how we're doing and how we know we're doing it. And then support credible multi-stakeholder initiatives, and that really goes to roundtables and the like. This is not going to be a surprise slide to anybody. This is the basic business value proposition when you look at what working on sustainability and making real change, the values that we derive from the business, and then the values that society will derive from those, and of course where they overlap is the shared value for all of society. So working with WWF over the last few years and other partners that we have, we really came to start putting all of these things around into 5 buckets. So it's food, it's how we source the food, it's people, so that's customers and our own crew and staff. It's the communities, and we have about 34,000 restaurants now around the world, so that's 34,000 individual communities that we're in, so there's a real role to play there. And then the planet, which is kind of a catch-all for energy and waste and everything else. So we have an internal kind of business thing that we group things under, which is good food, good people, good neighbor. And so when we were working on the sustainability side, we tried to put our pillars under those ones because that helps speak to the brand business people inside if we say, oh, this is why we're doing this pillar, because it speaks to something that you already have going on. So that's how we've done that. Now we get into our supply chain. And this is the Cargill Day, but I was thinking from the things you had there, you could call it the McDonald's Partner Day because Cargill is such a key partner of ours. They're our sole supplier for all of our beef in Canada, all of our chicken in Canada. So it's a real partnership that we have with them, and there's a real opportunity since we don't have to go to multi-different suppliers to make change. We can work directly with Cargill. So at the center of that, obviously, is the restaurants. That's what we do. That's what we operate. That's where we interact with people. Then there's the direct suppliers that we can directly influence, like the Cargills of the world, McCain, Danone, Heinz, and the rest. And then there's the indirect suppliers, and that's, of course, where you see the farms. It's the ranchers, it's the farmers, the fishermen, the things that provide the actual commodities that then go to those direct suppliers to us. So this is sort of how we look at it as our sphere of influence, just like WWF is saying, is really working with, instead of McDonald's trying to work with everybody on the ground and individual farmers, we start working with our direct suppliers and start making requirements from them first. Let Cargill do the harder work. When we talk about ethical supply chain for us, really groups for us right now under 4 categories, and we have a code of conduct for our suppliers, so Cargill and everyone else has to sign the code. The code, speaks to all the things you can imagine that it would about treatment of employees and animals and everything else, but it also includes the fact that if one of our suppliers is going to subcontract something to another supplier, that supplier also must sign the code of conduct, which is obviously legally binding, and then so on down the road. So we don't lose that connection if, Cargill works with someone else and that person works with someone else, and we can't come back and say, well, they didn't sign the code, so it's okay that they did that. Everybody along the chain has to do that. Then we have something that we use with all of our major suppliers called an supplier environmental scorecard, and that really is reported by them, and we are now doing it in a much better way, collecting it on a sort of a web-based format. So it measures kind of anything you can imagine from energy use, water, air quality, emissions, waste diversion, energy, and the like. And what we do is we get to start seeing patterns of where some companies, suppliers of ours, are doing really well, and where some others might benefit from some help and assistance from them. And one of the examples in Canada is we have 2 produce suppliers. And one of them, and obviously you can imagine there's a lot of water used in produce manufacturing and supplying to us. And one of the suppliers reduced their water use by 80% over 1 year. So when we looked at that, and obviously talked to them more about how they were able to achieve that, what we were able to do is say to them, hey, would you mind sitting down with our other produce supplier and giving them these guidance and show them how you did it. A lot of the things obviously are translatable, and they'll be able to do the same thing. So it's a huge success that that's happened, and we've had a major reduce in water use. And what that showed us is it's talking about sustainability being a pre-competitive issue. I always talk about sustainability from where I sit as being a non-competitive issue. So I work really closely with my counterparts in our industry like Tim Hortons and Wendy's, and we meet all the time, and we don't see what we're doing as competitive things where we're going to go out and say we're doing a much better job than Wendy's, we're doing a much better job than Tim Hortons, because really, and I'm sure you feel it, our industry is judged as an industry, not individual companies. So I think our suppliers are seeing the same thing. They're not treating it as a competitive issue against each other where this produce supplier wanted to keep all those initiatives a secret so that we maybe would give all the business to them instead of the other one. They were really happy to share it and go on there. Supplier workplace accountability, that really speaks to treatment of employees and the like. And then animal health and welfare is not going to be surprising to anybody that we have that in our supply chain. Then this talks about starting to go into some of our work with WWF. So we always knew what our customers wanted from us because we hear from them. We knew what government wanted us to do because we certainly hear from them. And we certainly knew what NGOs wanted us to do because we certainly hear from them. What we didn't have was a way to pull all of that together in a credible way and to lay out for us what we should really be focusing on first. So we brought WWF in a more formal capacity, and a couple other ones, Conservation International, and a couple others, and really sat down with them, and WWF did a deep dive into our global supply chain, looked at every aspect of where we source, how we source, who we source from, and they came back to us with some really great recommendations, and I'll show you how it's sort of built into our stuff. But one of the things that we came out of that with their guidance too was it's great that we're going to do all of these things, but you really have to be able to measure this stuff. So before we could sort of pull the trigger and start doing all these things, we had to have a baseline and figure out where we were on all of these issues right now so that we could demonstrate improvement and find out how that we need to collect that information in a credible way that when we are talking to people, they'll say, right, I get it, I see how you measured that. It wasn't just you telling yourself that you did better. And the key thing for us when we're talking about agriculture is really we try to avoid, wherever possible, sort of the ivory tower mentality that I'm sitting in my office in Toronto and deciding what sustainable beef is and then telling Cargill, guess what, I realized today what sustainable beef is. Please tell all beef producers they must do it this way. We really, want to reach out and pull that, and that's what those roundtables are so successful at. Is I sat at a roundtable that we'll talk about a month ago, and Kim was at my table, and there was producers at our table too. So what's really interesting is they're getting to tell me exactly. I mean, they came in off the farm that morning to sit there. I came in from my office on a plane to sit there, and we're able to interact directly with that. So it brings a whole level of knowledge to me that I wouldn't have otherwise. And then when I'm having these discussions about global beef sustainability within McDonald's or other groups, I start having that lens that I can bring to that and say, well, I heard from, it seems counterintuitive, but I heard from a rancher this, I heard from a farmer that. So this is what we came out with WWF at the end of this 18-month process of then going through there, which is something we call the Sustainable Land Management Commitment. And what it's going to do is ultimately require all of our suppliers to use only agricultural raw materials produced from sustainably managed land. So again, that sounds good. That's motherhood. What do we say is sustainably managed land? And so that's, of course, now where all the hard work has begun, is how do we determine what credibly is sustainable processes? There are some things that are in place, and we'll talk about them, and then there are some that aren't. So coming out of that, we said, okay, we source so much stuff, we can't just scattershot try to do everything. And WWF's advice too was you need to focus on, again, one of our principles, your highest priority areas. So we worked with them, they came back with this list for us. And so I've linked the item sort of with the a third-party organization or something that we're working with. So on beef, that logo is for the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and I'll talk a little bit about that, and I know Fawn's going to take you through a lot more of that later today. For poultry, for us, the one thing that did exist is the Roundtable for Responsible Soy, and it goes to what Jason Clay was talking about in his video about deforestation and such. And we had, since 1989, McDonald's has had a global policy of not sourcing any beef from the Amazon biome, and that was obviously to protect and take away some of the incentive to deforest land to raise beef on it, because we wouldn't buy any that was from deforested or recently deforested land. But one of the things we didn't fully understand is that for chicken, for us, one of the big impacts was the feed for chicken, which is largely soy, and that's also a deforestation issue where people deforest so that they can plant more soy. So we're now members of the Roundtable for Responsible Soy, and none of our suppliers can supply us with anything that isn't accredited through that body. For coffee, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later too, we're working closely with a lot of them, but specifically Rainforest Alliance. For palm oil, which was also in the video too, which I have to say for us, sort of the sustainability policy people, when we were sitting in the room with WWF and they came back and said, here's our list, and our #1 priority that McDonald's has the biggest impact sustainability-wise is palm oil. And of course, we were all sitting there and being like, we don't sell palm oil, I'm not sure what, get beef, get fish, get chicken, not sure palm oil. So when they took us through the actual impact that we have, it's very small for McDonald's Canada because we don't fry anything with palm oil or use it, so it's an icing on one thing, and it's in the McDonald's land cookies. It's very small for us, but it's very big for our Asian company that does par fry and fry in the restaurants with palm oil. So all these learnings that we had to take away and really digest. And then fiber, our packaging, globally it's about 85% of all of our packaging is fiber, so it's a huge issue for us, and obviously working through things like the Forest Stewardship Council, Sustainable Forest Initiative, and others. And then fish, and the Marine Stewardship Council, and a lot of you, again, Canadians probably see in the grocery store now the frozen fish. A lot of that has the MSC logo on it, and I'll talk a little bit about our interaction with that too. So I'll go through this quickly. This is really how we're looking at it. I thought it would be important for you guys to see some of the thought process that we're going through when we're talking about we want to source only verified sustainable products. What does that mean, and how are we going to verify that they're sustainable? So for us, it's got to be verified, again, not in that direct supplier level. So it's nice for Lauren to tell me that this is sustainable, but we have to go back beyond that. So for us, it has to be verified at the farm, forest, or ocean level as meeting our requirements that are in development now with WWF. And these are sort of the different options of the ways that we are going to look to verify. So for some of the things that you saw on the slide before, there's Rainforest Alliance, there's the Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil, there's Marine Stewardship Council. We'll use those credible third-party organizations. They're trusted, they're auditable, that's something that we can point to for customers. On some of the other ones, we might use third parties to verify our own standards. So that goes a lot to animal health and welfare, where for a decade and a half now, we've had the strictest animal welfare, health and welfare policies anywhere, and in almost every country they exceed what the government puts in place. And we worked a lot with Dr. Temple Grandin, which some of you may have seen the movie that was made about her. She's a brilliant woman. And she really designed all of those for us, and they then became sort of industry standards again that we didn't, it's our intellectual property. It was shared with everybody, so it can hopefully help everybody come along. And then there are some things like beef and chicken that don't have third-party certification, things that really don't have anything there. And that's part of what the roundtables that Fawn's going to talk about later are doing, is going to try to get to a point where how do we verify sustainable beef. But in the meantime, we can use our own auditors and we can use our own standards and start raising some of those policies within our organization and do that. So I want to get a little bit deeper into beef. It's obviously McDonald's is a burger company, so it makes sense that we would have a keen interest in beef. Our desired outcome on that is really to strengthen our own ability to deliver safe, sustainable, and an assured supply of beef for the system for the long term. That's a global statement. I always insert the Canadian and Canada in when I talk about it, because for us, it's really a source of pride that we have sourced and continue to source and hope to always source 100% of our beef is Canadian beef. 100% of our chicken is Canadian chicken. So for us, goes again to what Jason Clay was talking about. We have a business interest in ensuring that the Canadian beef industry is sustainable for the long term, because we always want to be able to source Canadian beef. And just put that down, the stat now, actually I'm trying to get the marketing people to update that for me, because we're now a little over 70 million pounds of Canadian beef every year. So it goes again to the size of the company, but also the opportunity that we have when working through Cargill, we're purchasing that amount of beef. So we're going to achieve that desired income by having, hopefully, a globally aligned but locally relevant, broadly accepted, credible, and measurable definition of sustainable beef. So there's a lot of verbiage in that, but it's, I think, one of the most critical statements for us is it's got to be globally aligned for a global company like us, for a global company like Cargill. It has to be locally relevant. There are obviously distinctions between raising cattle in Australia and raising cattle in Brazil and raising cattle in Canada, so we need to, the sustainability aspects need to respect that. And it's got to be credible, and it's got to be measurable so that we can talk about how we're doing it. So this is a little bit of background just on our work on beef sustainability. We co-hosted with WWF and Cargill and some others the first global conference that pulled together the global beef value chain at the end of 2010. And coming out of that led to the creation of the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. And that's a multi-stakeholder initiative that aims to advance continuous improvement and sustainability for the whole global value chain. And Fawn's probably going to go into some of this stuff a little bit deeper, but when they're looking at right now what the Roundtable is doing is trying to come up with a definition for sustainable beef, which will be high level, it'll be a motherhood statement, it'll be something, but it starts to give the guidance for all of us of where we're going. So, you know, that's what they're looking at when they're looking at that definition and looking at some of the principles that we can all sign on to. Then we took that away, and a lot of the people who, Cargill, myself, Walmart, others whose companies are engaged in the global roundtable wanted to form in-country roundtables for the major beef-producing countries like Canada. So we worked together, worked really closely with Fawn at CCA, who was you know, a great champion for this from the beginning, to start pulling together the Canadian beef value chain and get the understanding that we should have our own roundtable in Canada so that we can feed information back up to the global table, and we can bring information coming from the global table back to here so that we're ensuring that the Canadian perspective is represented and recognized in that global body. So we had a meeting, like I said, last month out here in Calgary. There was success. We all agreed to form this roundtable, and so now the hard work begins, of course, of starting to set all those things out. And now it's time for the first video, and this one, just to set up, this is one of the ones that came from the Our Food, Your Questions thing, so you'll see someone reading the question and doing this. And I think hopefully you'll get a sense of this transparency, and this is from the Low Ranch where we get beef from, and it's just about an hour outside of Calgary. So it really brings the whole thing together. And one of the interesting aspects, and you'll kind of see it because it's not as perfect as, you know, we would have made a video 5 years ago, because one of the things to do with the Our Food, Your Questions when we did the videos was there was no editing, it was one take, and the people didn't get the question before, so we just ask the question, and it's just the rancher answering off the top of his head. So I think it rings a little bit more true, but it's maybe not as professional as you'd expect. Okay.
Hi, my name is Jeff Kroll, and I'm responsible for the Supply Chain and Quality Systems Group at McDonald's Restaurants of Canada. We're here in southern Alberta to show you what a farm looks like and how they operate and the conditions that the animals are under. And I'm here with Bob Lowe, who's the co-owner of Low Ranch. And Bob, our first question is from GL from Kingston, Ontario. Maybe you could post a picture of these happy family farms in which you say your animals are raised with the best care.
Our farm is 3 generations. There's my father, my brother, myself, my nephew, and my son. We just raise cattle the way they're supposed to be raised, I guess. If you're a cow, it's pretty idyllic. The mother cows are on pasture year-round. The calves, after they're weaned, will go into the feedlot.
And what do they feed on when they're here?
Grass, just grass.
And how big is this area we're looking at?
Well, this particular field is 320 acres. We've got pastures in the mountains that are 24,000 acres.
Wow. That's a lot of pasture.
Yeah.
You mentioned a feedlot. Would we be able to actually go out and see a feedlot?
We can do that. We have a feedlot as part of our operation.
Fantastic.
Okay, as you can see, that's my house over there. It's 200 yards from the feedlot. I can walk to work. My kids, when they were little, could come over and see me anytime. It's important to me that the consumers are told the truth about where their food comes from. We aren't trying to gloss anything. What we do, we're proud of what we do. We eat what we produce in this feedlot, and I wouldn't try and sell it to somebody else if I wouldn't eat it myself.
Bob, where are we now?
Right now we're at the feedlot. It's another division of our farm. This is where the calves will come after they're weaned.
And would this be the average size for a feedlot?
We're 4,000 head capacity. We're probably considered a medium-sized feedlot in Alberta.
How many months would it actually be here?
The ones that are going back into the breeding herd will be here about 5 months. The ones that will go into the food chain will be here about 8 months.
Our next question is from Squid Inn. What do you feed your animals? So Bob, what is actually in the feed?
We feed a mixture of straw, silage, grain, and a mineral pack. The straw is this. You can see it's from a mature plant. This is barley straw. Silage is just an immature plant. It's green. The nutrient content is spread throughout the whole plant instead of just the seed head. The barley seed from a mature plant looks like this. This is the milled barley. That just basically means it's crushed. The reason we do it is it improves the digestion. We do feed analysis on all our feed, and where it's lacking in vitamins and minerals, we get a custom formulated mineral pack. This is a sample of the mixed ration that comes out of the feed truck. It's the silage, the straw. You can see some grain kernels in there. That's what the cattle get to eat.
Our next question is from Emily. Does the animal's feed contain any antibiotics? I'm here with Calvin Booker, who's a veterinarian in southern Alberta, and actually Bob's local veterinarian. And Calvin and Bob, I'm hoping we can answer Emily's question.
So, Jeff, some of the feeds that we feed animals, cattle, actually does contain antibiotics. Depends on what stage of the production cycle the animals are in and what particular diseases they might be susceptible to at that point in the production cycle. We would look to one of the licensed antimicrobial products in Canada to try and prevent and control diseases that might occur in the cattle population. Cattle are, in some ways, are a lot like people. They get sick from a lot of different diseases. Some of those are infectious diseases like the common cold, and others might be metabolic disturbances or digestive disease, like when we have an upset stomach. For the animal health products that we use in Canada, they're approved and regulated as to how we can use those by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency or the Veterinary Drugs Directorate Division of Health Canada. Included in that would be what we call a withdrawal period, which would be the minimum number of days between when that animal received that antibiotic and when it could actually be harvested and put into the food chain.
I hope we answered your question, and I hope you enjoyed the visit to the farm and the feedlot and have a better understanding of how we care for the animals.
Great. So I think that just gives you, it's self-explanatory. It was a great way for to answer those questions and to show people directly that it's not factory farming like some people like to refer to it as. This is, a multi-generational ranch, and you can tell Bob cares for his animals. Just one quick slide on fish, because that was one of our priority commodity areas. Since 2001, we've been sourcing our fish from MSC certified fisheries. So we worked with a Sustainable Fisheries Partnership to set out those standards and do that. Our sole fish supplier is Highliner. They're fully MSC certified. But what we hadn't done before that, again, not thinking that it was something we needed to communicate directly to customers, is we didn't complete the chain of custody audit for our own operation to be able to use the logo. So we could always say we source only from MSC certified fisheries. It's in the purchase agreement with Highliner. It has to come from there. But we just completed that at the beginning of this month. So the audit is now done and complete and submitted, and so we think any day now we should be getting the check mark that we're good. And so you're going to start seeing that logo on fillet boxes probably starting in November by the time we get the plates changed and stuff printed. So really McDonald's Europe, as they do for so many things in our organization relative to sustainability, led the way, and they did this a couple of years ago. McDonald's US did it last year, and we've done it now. Now we're working with our Latin American company and the other division, the Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa division, because they're going to be doing the same thing. So now, talk quickly about coffee, which is a big thing for Canadians, big thing for McDonald's Canada, and a big sustainability issue. So I talked about how we work with Rainforest Alliance, and right now 100% of our espresso beans are Rainforest Alliance certified. So any espresso, latte, cappuccino, whatever beverage you get from McDonald's, the beans are 100% RA certified. And a little more, it's hard to get the exact number as it comes in there, so supply chain never wants me to say a number, they want me to say more than. So more than 5% right now of our drip coffee is certified. So that's about a little over 10% of our total coffee volume. And we're going to keep increasing that purchase of sustainable or of certified coffee as well. But one of the things WWF talked to us about when we were looking at coffee was there are kind of two approaches to take. You can buy the certified coffee, and that's great, and that's wonderful, and it's a good way to connect with your consumers, but it's really not the best way that a huge global brand like McDonald's can impact coffee sustainability. The real way that we can make a difference versus the mom and pop coffee shop down the street is we can use our financial resources to help directly smallhold farmers, coffee farmers, to make their processes more sustainable, so then hopefully they can get certified from Rainforest Alliance and then get a higher price for their coffee. So that was one of the things that we took away, and we've really worked hard at figuring out how to do that. So it's called our Technical Assistance Program. McDonald's Canada sources about 50% of our coffee from Guatemala, so that was a key area for us to focus on. And WWF came back and told us that 95% of Guatemalan coffee farmers are considered micro or small, so they probably have less than an acre that they're working, so it's really, you know, their whole livelihood. There's a couple of the partners that we brought on board to work with. And in 2012, working with McDonald's US too, we committed $6.5 million, which should benefit 13,000 farmers in Guatemala over 5 years. And then our looking forward at the end of that 5 years, we want to see, did those 13,000 smallholder farmers, are they up to the standards now that can be certified? And if they are, we will move on and select, you know, 13,000 more, or hopefully even more than that. And if they're not, maybe we make an additional investment to keep that going while we go elsewhere. So we'll see how that goes. And I just have a quick video to show you on the coffee that I think really brings to life what the technical assistance does, which is kind of hard to get across. And I use this video internally with our organization too, and some of the marketing people don't have a real clear sense of what we're supporting out there. So McDonald's traveled down to Guatemala just in March of this year to film some of this stuff. So ready to go.
Yo soy Sandra López y mi principal producción es el café.
Many commodities in the world, and coffee is no different, is being produced by small farmers. And in order for them to be able to get economic benefits, they need to really come together to get economies of scale, to be able to market their coffee collectively so that they can benefit from this process.
Lo poquito que se cosechó este año para los niños, para comprar los útiles, que pagar que lo que tenía, inscripción y todo.
Nuestra producción fue muy baja a comparación de años pasados. Ha venido disminuyendo año con año.
Smallholder farmers face many challenges: putting enough food on the table, producing enough income to pay for essentials such as healthcare and school fees so their children can have a good education.
You know, coffee is a product that's grown in developing countries. It's grown by a lot of smallholder farmers. There's certainly challenges, but they can be addressed. And one of the things that McDonald's is really bringing forward is this idea of pre-competitive collaboration, that it's in everybody's interest in this industry to work together.
And we're really impressed by both SCAN and TechnoServe. We ended up working with both of them. TechnoServe has a lot of experience in the field, both in Central America and in Africa, as well as other places in the world, providing effective technical assistance and helping to alleviate poverty.
What we teach is the best practices all around the coffee cycle.
El corte debe ser con un ángulo de 40 grados.
Aprendimos a recepar. Esto va a producir hijos y ya más adelante para tener una mejor cosecha.
To watch the different practices being employed and to watch small farmers be able to teach others as they've learned over time what types of practices will create a higher quality bean or a greater yield has really been a key part of our journey.
One of the things that really excited us about working with SCAN was they have a unique approach, which is to create collaboration among different partners that are already working on the ground in Guatemala to promote sustainable coffee production and do technical assistance.
We don't work alone. We have made this special alliance with national actors, and these actors are bringing all the technical help into the organizations, building capacity in the organizations so they can deal better and give the proper attention to the producers.
They want to be able to market their coffee jointly, and they want to be able to access finance to be able to manage their businesses.
When a farmer has limited land or grow limited coffee, they're going to have a limited income, and that just creates other sort of stresses in the family and the community. What we can do through this kind of intervention, what McDonald's is investing in, is, you know, how can we maximize what they're doing on that small piece of land? How can we get their productivity up? How can we get their income up?
We're not providing a gift or charity from abroad, but you're building into the very business model of a producer group the ability to be more sustainable in the long run. And I think that's not only visionary, but I think it's important that companies that lead the food world, like McDonald's, that they're able to see these kinds of needs in the future and are really beginning to set the groundwork for what will ultimately be a much more sustainable supply chain for them as well.
You're seeing more and more companies look at investments in sustainability as a method of creating not only value for the business, but value for society, and finding ways to bake sustainability into their business practices so that they're there to stay. It's not just a special investment. It's beyond philanthropy. It's not just writing a check. It's something that's part of how you do business and part of your customers' expectations for how you do business. And in that way, it encourages additional similar investments.
When a company like McDonald's gets involved in coffee sustainability, it elevates the conversation to a much larger audience. It promotes dialogue, and it reinforces just how important this issue is.
So you can see the difference between that very produced video, the nice music and everything, and the Our Food, Your Questions approach. So it's interesting that as a brand we're kind of straddling those two things to see which one is more receptive to people. The other thing I think that's interesting to take away from that in the coffee, and I almost think it reverses what I was saying earlier about, we want to be supplier-led, and we'll take our, from the producers and the growers, they'll tell us what the sustainable way to do things is, and we'll do that. And when we first started talking about technical assistance, and the organizations were talking to us about what they would be doing with farmers on the ground and showing them, better ways to cut and prune and stuff, and I was sitting there thinking, aren't we supposed to be asking them what the right thing is to do, and they're going to tell us? And it really is important to have those partners like WWF and SCAN and TechnoServe to really say, this is different. They have been operating, or many of them have been operating in a certain way, and that's how it is, and there are better ways to do it, and we've now identified those and can show them. So an interesting dichotomy of the approach we sometimes have to take. So this is just sort of our overall desired outcomes on sustainable sourcing writ large. So again, nothing's going to be a real surprise there. We want to assure that we can source these products for the long term. We want to assure that we can source them in the amounts and quantities they need and at the spec that we want. We need to identify mechanisms and practices that we can scale and that we can use, we can measure, we can report back again. And then again, for us, as we're coming to realize, we want to develop a communications platform that lets us talk to customers about the fact that we're concerned about our sourcing and we're clear about where those are coming from. So I know I've taken up more time than I was allotted, so I'm just going to scoot through, but I just wanted, sometimes I like to throw in a couple of other slides just to show that we're not just focusing on sustainable sourcing and not just putting pressure back on Cargill and the like, and we're doing stuff for the restaurants and things that we control ourselves too. So I always think this is a great example because it's something that was tested in Sweden over the last 10 years, which was building restaurants in a way that they can be completely dismantled at the end of their life or when they're ready to be rebuilt. So McDonald's is the official restaurant of the Olympics. Last year we built 4 restaurants in the Olympic Village for London, and all of the restaurants were completely disassembled at the end of the games. So the one at the top there that you can see is out in what is a field, what was before and what it is again. So if you go there now, it's just a grass field. You'd never know that there was a McDonald's restaurant that was doing tens of thousands of people every day coming through it. So 75% of everything that was taken out of that was either able to be reused in other restaurants that were being built or was recycled. So it just shows you there some of the components, even just thinking outside the box where the washroom, instead of putting tiles in the washroom that we would normally do, it was a tile-like vinyl wallpaper that we put on the wall. So it looked like tile, but you were then saving the fact that all those tiles would have been smashed up when they came out. So another way, we're just trying to think beyond that. It's obviously incredibly more expensive to build a restaurant like that because things have to be sort of screwed together instead of glued together so they can come back apart. And the electrics and stuff, it's difficult, but it's something that we're learning from, and I think 20 years from now we'll probably be building restaurants like that. Energy is a big issue for us too, and it is for everybody. We're going to continue to adopt energy efficient practices. Those are some things that are really obvious and that we can do, and we've done a lot of. And we're doing a lot of testing, and I show that restaurant at the top right, which is one that's in Germany now, and it's sort of called the Kitchen Sink Restaurant. And they put every imaginable, you can see the wind turbine on the roof and the solar panels and the water collection. They do kind of everything that is imaginable to do to a restaurant there. And then they start evaluating what works, what doesn't. You know, we've learned a lot about solar because people are always asking us about solar power, and we've learned a lot about areas of the world where that works for us, and areas of the world like Canada where the investment to do that is not going to give us the same return that doing some other sustainability aspects would do. And then waste diversion is always a huge issue for people. There's lots of challenges that I could spend the whole day talking to you about, but some of the things we're trying to work towards are things like using our own used cooking oil, collecting it, having it turned into biodiesel, and then empowering the delivery fleets to come back. So we are doing that in some areas of the Middle East, some areas of Latin America, and they're now starting to do it in an area of Australia. And we tested it during the Olympics, so I think that we're going to be able to get there as well too. And that's it, and I'm happy to take any questions that I've provoked. Oh, Kim, do you want to moderate it so I don't have to say who's first?
Go ahead, you can start.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I didn't get two things. McDonald's sustainability. The first one, you said you have like 64 million of customers every day. What do you do? What do you actually do about the obesity problem? And the second point is, what do you actually do about the food waste?
Yeah, those are two great questions. So the question is about, we are seeing 64 million people every day around the world. So what are we doing to address obesity, and what are we doing to address food waste, which are related but quite different too. So on the obesity side, that's a critical issue, and you saw the 5 pillars that we had for sustainability, and one of them was food, and under food is nutrition and that. So, you know, I'd love to have the whole day and take you through all the things, so that's why I didn't talk about it. But some of the things that we're working for around obesity is how to inform customers about what the calorie counts are, what the other items are in there. So you see around lots of areas of the world now, we have the calorie counts right on the menu. It's something we went back and forth on because it is providing information, but if you were choosing between milk and Diet Coke, well, milk has, you know, 250 calories and Diet Coke has 0. So should you give your child a glass of milk or a glass of Diet Coke? So, but I think where we've got to now is customers, you know, we're informing them, not educating them. So we don't have to tell them the difference between milk and Diet Coke. So we can list the calories and they can still make that decision. So it's something we're working towards. Other things are, and things I'm trying to relate it back to the sustainability stuff too. So one of the things that we have as a goal on the nutrition side is we want to increase the amount of fruit and vegetables that we offer. So when we talked about this internally, I mean, people ask me all the time, well, why don't you have a veggie burger? Why don't you have a lean burger stuff? We've had all of those things, and before, customers just haven't purchased them. They haven't wanted them. So at some point, we have to, you know, sell what the customers want to. So it doesn't mean that it wouldn't come back, but when we've tried them before, it hasn't. But one of the things we talked about was, instead of just offering more things, so instead of just saying, now we've got carrot sticks, now we've got celery sticks if you want them, was using McDonald's marketing genius for how to drive customers to want more of them. So one of the really interesting things that McDonald's France has done is called Kiwi on a Stick. And you can imagine as you're going through, and we have about 75% of our business now is through the drive-through. So that's really where we have to be thinking, is how do customers want to interact with food in a drive-through sense? So if you had just a basket of kiwi and you're going through the drive-through, you probably wouldn't buy one because you're thinking, how do I peel it? How do I eat it when I'm driving? The Kiwi on a Stick idea is it's a peeled kiwi on a stick. So when you get it, you can eat the kiwi while you're driving. It's been a huge success in McDonald's France. So it's one of those ways that we could put a kiwi on the menu and have baskets of kiwi, and we wouldn't sell any kiwi. We could sell oranges. People can't peel an orange while they're driving. They're not going to buy an orange in it. But they are buying the kiwi on a stick. And so there's other things like that that I think we're starting to try to use our talent to figure out what could we do and how could we make it accessible for customers. So I could go on and on. Oh, yeah, sorry, and the food waste side, yeah, gotcha. And on the food waste side, that's good. And I had a little clip, I could do another whole presentation on waste as well, too. One of the things that we changed for the old way that McDonald's used to do stuff is we would sort of churn out items. So make 10 cheeseburgers, make 10 Big Macs, and then they would stay in the warming bin for 10 minutes, and then whatever wasn't sold then got thrown out. So we changed that process just about 1999, I guess it was, to something that's called Made for You now. So now when you go in and you order something, it's made, we just changed the equipment, changed the process, so it's made when you ordered it, which is why I'm always telling people too, if you want a Big Mac with tomato and no sauce, I mean, you can have it whatever way you want it because they're making it as it's ordered. So that's one of the ways that we significantly reduced our food waste. One of the other key ways is going back into the supply chain too and working with our suppliers on where were their biggest areas where they were causing food waste to happen that didn't even make it to the store to be wasted. It was getting thrown out at the distribution center or at the production facility, and starting to work with them on some ways to reduce that, because when we looked at it, that's really the much bigger food waste issue than in the restaurant. And then what we're doing in some of the world, and we're looking at it really hard in Canada too, is composting, because like I said, 85% of our packaging is fiber too. So there's a way to take the food and the packaging together and compost them. So we're struggling with some of that because of course you have to get the customer then to separate things, and then we have like rodent issues of storing food too. So we're working on a few of those things. We've got pilots in Vancouver, a couple in Quebec, and we tried some stuff in Toronto that didn't succeed, but it wasn't because of that. It was the lack of support from the vendor that was sort of took on more than they could control. So those are some of the things that we're doing. There's certainly more, and it's something we're looking at a global level in the sustainability framework, is what's the next step. So we've kind of done the low-hanging fruit on those things. Where's the next thing to go? So
you got a ton of questions.
Sorry.
Hi, Rebecca Watkins, representing the National Federation of Young Farmers from the United Kingdom. Could you just go back to your slide about Canadian beef? Quite early.
I will get there. Whoops.
That one. Yeah. That's not a beef animal.
Yeah.
That silhouette is of a dairy animal, and that's not acceptable.
Yeah, and
It is not okay that you can do that and employ people who don't know the difference.
And I don't mean to laugh at that, because you're exactly right, and that's what I'm saying about I'm waiting for the updated one. And this is demonstrating in the tower in Toronto, unaware of things. Our creative agency came back, and of course we were just like, oh my god, what an amazing shot with the cow and the cannon, you know. And then and we went through, we printed the booklet, and I'm telling you, once we distributed it to our supply chain, that is the first thing that they came back with.
So basically my question based on that, considering you're losing confidence from your suppliers because of errors like that, and I think that would probably be more so in the UK than over here, like we're a bit more critical.
Yes.
No.
Engaged.
So what are you doing to employ better informed people and recruit from within agriculture?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one of the things I was talking to Fawn about that I think every time we talk now I bring it up is I had an opportunity in July to go to Texas A&M University where they run a Beef 101 course, and I went and took that course there with a bunch of other people, the people that you saw in the video from Guatemala too, my sustainability counterparts too. We went down there and had stood outside, watched how a condition score is given to cattle, why it's given, and went through everything. There was producers there. It was just, I learned so much in those 2 days of that course that, like I said, every time I'm talking to farmers, I'm regurgitating information I gleaned from that. And on the second day of the course, you take a whole side of beef, and we had a PhD student taking us through, but we were doing it like cutting out every cut, and then he was explaining to us, we would use this for this cut of beef, we would use this for trim, and this is why, and this is why. It was, so those are the things. So we came back, and I said, everybody in McDonald's Canada needs to go and take this course. It's so, 1,000% increase in my knowledge, and I've been working with these guys in beef sustainability for 2 years before that, but I learned more in those 2 days of that on-the-ground stuff. And like I said, working with the roundtable stuff and having actual ranchers sitting at the table and correcting me on things I would say, or now I think it's more just I'm asking, what is this, how is this, how does that happen? So I was hoping to tour the Low Ranch when I was out here, and just had a bunch of other meetings and stuff that we couldn't make it work, but it's something I want to do too and get out there and stuff.
Our food, your questions, is a major deal. Shoot.
Your prices don't seem to follow the oil and gas and food prices at the grocery store. Is that going to change, or how would you respond? Because as a consumer, that really worries me. That doesn't seem to follow the same trend.
Right, and you're saying because our prices don't increase? Yeah. So, and I'm sure Lauren will be happy to talk about that from Cargill perspective too. One of the things, and we get this question too, is, how can you, have a 99-cent burger? Isn't that because you're, using hoofs and, ears and your stuff, and that's why you can do that? And it really goes back to that volume number. And when you're purchasing 70 million pounds of a commodity through one supplier, you can manage your prices in a better way than you can. And that's so some of the thing on coffee we're learning, because the coffee prices, as we're buying more certified coffee and investing in the technical assistance, the price of coffee isn't going up. So the company and the operators are taking a loss every time we buy more of that, because that decision is made is not to increase the price for customers. Oh, it's just coming out of profits for us. So that's a great question. As we go further and further down this thing, at some point our franchisee is going to say, I think I've had enough of absorbing the cost for consumers. And that's something I think, as we talked about, where the risk aversion for the Our Food, Your Questions, and the risk aversion for engaging directly with customers on sustainability, and that's where these are coming from. So right now there's a risk aversion to increase prices because we're doing sustainable stuff. The thought is that customers will say, well, then I'll go to one of your competitors that's not doing sustainable because I don't want to pay for what you should be doing anyway, right? So I think we may get to a point in working with WWF and those things where they might say, you know what, customers are going to pay 5 more cents for your cup of small coffee, and that way you could triple your investment. And so, watch this space. In a few years we could get there, and prices may start to go up. But I think we're going to have a way to point to why we're increasing them and why we aren't absorbing the cost ourselves for something that I think at this point we look at as our responsibility.
Along that same line, you talked a lot about environmental sustainability. What about economic sustainability to the farmers? Do you have an action plan for making sure the farmers are getting paid enough to continue to produce food?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I had meetings this week on specifically this issue, and something that was brought to my attention through something in Canada called the Cattlemen Young Leaders Program is that a real challenge is passing on the family farm to the next generation, because it's been mom and dad's business and investment their whole lives. How do they retire with, in Toronto you would sell your house and then that's your investment and that's what you retire on. You can't do that if you want to pass that on. So I think there is a real role for McDonald's Canada, specifically in the Canadian context, to play on that. And I think it connects with us really directly, because we're now we have 3rd generation franchisees. So Grandma and Grandpa had the first franchises in Calgary, and now their grandchildren are taking those over. So it's important to us, and it's so valuable for us to have that multi-generational thing, because they're so connected to the brand. It's just like being on the ranch. These generations, that's all they've done is run the restaurant, manage the crew, all that stuff. So I don't know exactly what the right role for us to play in that is, and we're having conversations with Cargill and with CCA and with CYL to figure out what can we do. There's a couple things I won't go into that I was raised in our meetings this week that I think are real opportunities. What I want for McDonald's Canada in that space, for that creating that economic viability, and Kim, you remember when we were talking about the roundtable, one of the things when we were kind of prioritizing the principles for sustainable beef, our table was really clear on putting the economic and financial sustainability of the family farm at the top, because that has to be, all the rest of the stuff can't happen if the business isn't profitable, right? It's the same for us. We can't do all this sustainable stuff if no one's buying our products. So
2 more questions.
Okay, hi there, my name is Michaela Hudson. I'm representing Vancouver for Canada. And one of my fellow delegates mentioned 2 very important issues, the rising issue of overnutrition and also the sustainability concerns of food waste. So to combat these 2 issues, has McDonald's ever considered reducing portion sizes?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And around the world there are different portion sizes, just like there's different formulations for the amount of sodium or things that are in different ingredients. And I think that's something that we're, again, started at Risk Averse and we're learning a lot. We've reduced the sodium content in our chicken in Canada by 50% now. Nobody notices, right? Nobody is saying, oh, this is very bland chicken. But the idea before was, customers like this because of the taste, right? So we have to preserve the taste. That's why they're coming. So we've had some successes there. So I think you're going to see that opportunity for us to do more stuff, and reducing portion size or those things is really interesting because it goes to the price point too. So if we reduce the portion size and didn't reduce the price, our customers going to feel cheated on that. I think one of the things the McDonald's founder Ray Kroc has lots of Krocisms, but one of the one that I think speaks to a lot of the stuff around sustainability is he said, I don't know what McDonald's will be selling in 20 years. I just know we'll be selling the most of it. So I think that's true whether it's kiwi on a stick or apple slices that we have here. Is we need to be in some way customer-led. So if customers are demanding a veggie burger, we're going to have a veggie burger, and we'll do it in the McDonald's way and make it the best tasting veggie burger you can imagine, and we'll make it the best selling veggie burger we have. But if customers don't want it, then it's this constant balancing act about, are we totally consumer driven, or how do we move consumers? And I think we're getting a little bit more comfortable with moving consumers a bit, and that, so it's touchy, I'll say, but I think over time you're certainly going to see it. And this is the room, right? This is the generation that is asking the questions that generations before don't want. They're asking, can I get a triple Big Mac? Why don't you have a triple Big Mac? I want that. So we have to balance that with people saying smaller portion sizes and people saying bring back supersized fries. So there's always a balance there. And so I think that again goes to informing people about nutrition and that stuff, and if they have options, then hopefully they can take it.
Hi, I'm Jacob Works. I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada. In the East Coast, we can actually buy a McLobster from McDonald's. Earlier this year, we were having trouble with the lobster industry. They're just not selling for much. We had lobstermen go on strike, try to get the prices to increase. I'm just wondering about if McDonald's, if they pay just the very bare minimum for the lobster, or if they pay a bit more to help it become more sustainable so lobstermen don't have to overfish. And that's just a really big concern with my community.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm currently, at this moment, being educated on our lobster sourcing because I'm getting more questions like this. And you're right, we've always before just offered the McLobster on the East Coast, and we've now, if anywhere in Ontario, it's now offered in Ontario now too, and that is largely because of the price of lobster, we were able to do that. So this is an interesting point, and we have Highliner as one of our suppliers for lobster, but we have a local smaller operation that supplies some of it too. So I'm trying to set up a call with both of them to talk about the sustainability aspects of lobster, and just for me to understand more about why is the price what it is now, and when's it likely to change, and why, and what drivers exist for lobster specifically. One of the other things I know from the East Coast lobster fisheries is talking to the Marine Stewardship Council, because I was asking them, hey, we're going to be putting your logo on our box. We're selling McLobster in a much larger area than we had before. I'm assuming I'm going to get the question of why is this Marine Stewardship Council certified lobster? So at this point, no lobster fisheries in Canada are certified, but the Marine Stewardship Council believes that most of them could be. So we're working with them now, and I think there's a couple that are going through the process right now to receive that certification. So this is, again, where we'll hopefully help drive and stabilize a price, because once we get that, we're going to be going back to our suppliers and saying, you need to source our McLobster only from MSC certified stock. So that will, and I don't know, I mean, you obviously know more about that than I would, whether that will help, hinder, and stuff, but it's a great question, something I wish I knew a little bit more about on the lobster side.
Jeff, needless to say, you can see the number of hands and everything going. We could be here and answer question after question after question, which is clearly a representative of the quality of person that you are to be able to share this, the organization, the impact that you've had. So my question to you, for you, is for the group. You said this is the kind of group that is going to help influence and make you better. How can they get in touch with you? What can they do to do better job of influencing you, which influences McDonald's, which influences the planet?
Yeah. I think that's a great question and a great takeaway for you guys. And I mean, anybody who wants to, that didn't get a chance to ask a question to me, that wants to ask me a question, Kim's got my contact information. I'm happy to address that with you. And that's one of the ways, is communicating with the brand, right? Is we have as many different ways as you can imagine in the 21st century: Facebook, Twitter, email, the Our Food Your Questions website, directly to people inside the organization. But it's asking those questions. It's asking that question about lobster. It's asking it because if, you know, I'm a busy person, but when I get asked the question, I need to find the answer, right? So when I get that, I have 2 emails that I got this morning that are still coming through the Our Food Your Questions that someone is asking. So, you know, our agency is saying, Jeff, can you help us answer these 2 questions? So if you ask the question, we have to address it, and it gets cataloged and is in there. So now when I'm, you know, when I go back and I'm talking, I'll say, yeah, and you know what, I was at the presentation, I got asked a question about lobster, and these were really good, and I didn't know exactly how to address it. We got asked one of the Our Food Your Questions questions from this morning is your lobster certified sustainable, right? So, you know, I've got to answer these questions. So I think that's really the best way in the 21st century, because everything's tracked. We have, you know, Facebook, this is how many questions we got on this is how many likes we got when we said this is how many retweets we got when we talked about, you know, sustainable eggs, this is how many retweets. So that drives it, right? If we do the stuff and no one cares, it's harder then for me to go to the business side of the business and say, we need to move forward with this, we need to do this, because they're going to look and say, well, it doesn't look like our customers want us to do that. No one's asked us about it. No one's pushing for that. So I think that's the real thing, is use the 21st century communications methods.
Amen. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me thank you for a great presentation to Jeff. It was absolutely wonderful. Thanks so much. And I have a gift for you, and it is a donation to UNICEF on behalf of everything you've done. We think that UNICEF is a good umbrella organization to advance the thing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for your questions, guys.
Okay, so the first answer is to that last question is make sure you use the social media avenues. Number 2, look up Our Food Your Questions. There's tons of them on there. Number 3 is Jeff.Fitzpatrick-Stillwell@ca.mcd.com. You asked for it, so you got it. Ladies and gentlemen, stand, stretch, straighten out that underwear. Come on, stand. Okay. I'd love to give you a grand break, but I know that that is going to be a little more difficult because we got 2 more presentations here. They'll be a little shorter, and then we're heading out onto the ranch. Okay? Okay. Okay. How was that? Wasn't that great? When we think of global agriculture, one of the largest and most respected brands in agriculture is Cargill. It was referenced by Jason Clay in the WWF. It was referenced on many times by Jeff this morning on the importance that Cargill plays to their organization. I've had the great opportunity to spend a bunch of time with this global leader the last couple of years. They are a major agribusiness leader in Canada. I've seen their involvement in the grains industry. I've seen their involvement in the beef business, the cattle business. I've seen their involvement in the processing, whether it's our new canola plants that they're just expanding the existing one, building another new one in Alberta, the malt plant that they have for our beer, the beef processing plant that we have outside of Calgary. I've seen their involvement in policy leadership, whether it's the beef industry or the grains industry and what they're doing in sustainability and bringing the groups together, what they're doing in ag awareness. And I've seen their involvement on a different side a few weeks ago. And that was when the flood came to Calgary, and more specifically, the flood that hit, the same flood, and what it did to the rural community of High River. And that was where Cargill truly showed its true leadership and character, to come to get the water systems going back into that community so that the community got water first and what needed to be done, and then the beef industry could get back on its feet and where it was going. This is truly leadership in action. And to provide us an overview of Cargill and its commitment to sustainability, and to outline the support that Cargill has for youth leadership, please welcome Lauren Stone, the Sustainability Manager for Cargill Canada. Welcome, Lauren.
All right, thanks very much for that introduction, Kim, and welcome to all of you who are not from Calgary and not from Canada. Welcome. So I guess I'm just going to give you a brief introduction about myself. So I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, which for those of you who don't know is just east of Alberta, and I've been surrounded by agriculture my entire life. My father was involved in the canola crushing business, and my family has farmland about 2 hours west of Winnipeg. So growing up in the city, spending time on the farm, and working with Cargill has really given me the opportunity to learn about the different aspects of the agricultural supply chain and how they can all collaborate towards common solutions. So as you can see, this idea of collaboration has come up quite consistently this morning with Jason Clay's video, with Jeff's presentation, and you'll see this as a theme through my presentation today as well. So today I'm going to be give you a little bit of a broad perspective of Cargill and the company and how we operate across the world, and also what is sustainability, why it's important, and what Cargill is doing across the world, and then also where sustainability is headed and how all of you can fit into this broader puzzle. Okay, so a little bit of an overview of Cargill. So we are a very diverse company, and we have a huge footprint and a large scope, and we operate in 65 countries across the world, employing over 140,000 people. Over the past 2 decades, Cargill has increased its asset base in Canada by 580%. It's a really great country to do business, and we love operating here. We do everything from the beef industry to poultry to grains and oilseeds, so we are very diverse. And we help customers succeed through collaboration, innovation, and we're committed to applying our global knowledge and experience to help meet the economic, environmental, and social challenges that we all face, not only in Canada, but in other countries across the world. So this is kind of a slide about our corporate responsibility commitment. So we do have 4 key areas that we focus on. So one is conducting business with integrity, operating in responsible supply chains, enriching our communities, and working to feed the world. So as Kim had brought up, we are very focused on working within the community, and that example of the flooding within Calgary and High River. And being a good corporate citizen is very important to our company. Last year, Cargill gave back over $4 million in support of Canadian causes. We work specifically with the Food Banks of Canada through employee-led food drives, product donations, and financial support. So it's really important that not only are we giving money to some of these causes, but we're also engaging our employees. Okay, so when we're talking about sustainability, what is sustainability? So this is a really good question to answer because there's not one clear definition of what sustainability is. And so as sustainability is gaining momentum, as consumers and the public are putting a lot more thought into where their food is coming from and if it's produced in a responsible way. But what we've learned over the past few years, as this topic of sustainability is gaining momentum, is that there is not one clear definition. And the issues within sustainability can vary from pollution to child labor to food safety to food security. Sustainability means different things to different people and also affects different countries in different ways. So how do we define sustainability with all these different views and different impacts to different geographies? Well, we look at where we're going to be in the future. So although we have all these differing meanings and we all have these different paths and outcomes on where we want to get to for sustainability, we all end up at the same goal. And that is to essentially to ensure that there is going to be enough food to feed a growing population. And not just a growing population, but how do we have enough to feed our current population, the next generation, and then where we're going to be in the future. So the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization has estimated that about 1 billion people today go without sufficient food. So we know that we need to start thinking about how our world is going to look in the future, so that when we do reach a population of 9 billion people by 2050, we know that we have the science and the technology available to help us feed that population. We need to be able to produce more food using less land, using less water, and essentially using fewer resources. But when talking about where we want to be in the future, we cannot forget about our past and where we've come from. And we have a really great story to tell in agriculture, and we have come a really long way. So this is a great example about where we've come from when growing a bushel of corn. So as you can see, in the late 1800s, the amount of land it took to grow 1 bushel of corn compared to where we were in 2009 and where we're going to be in 2030. So as you can see, the science and technology that we have developed in order to produce essentially a sustainable product going into the future, we have come a really long way. So another great example is the canola industry. And so when I look back at my own childhood in the 1990s, spending time at my great-uncle's farm in Manitoba, he was producing about 22 bushels of canola per acre. So now when I go back to the farm, he's producing 45 bushels of canola acre. So over a period of 15 years, that's how much we are improving. And through the science and innovation that we've been able to develop, this is where we've come to. And so now Canada is become a leader in canola production, become a leader in canola science and innovation, and so we're being able to produce more food to essentially feed a growing population as we move forward. And so through this innovation on our farm, we're able to use less fertilizer, almost no irrigation, and less land while producing even more crop. So as you can see, we have come a long way in agriculture, and we're always looking at new ways to produce a sustainable product. And as Cargill, we know that we're just one piece of the puzzle, but we all have a part to play. And we all have different expertise and different experience in different areas. And so in order to move forward on this journey, we all need to contribute and we need to collaborate. And so all of you as young leaders from different parts of the world, you all have the opportunity to go back home and lead the topic of sustainability into the future. So what is Cargill doing in the space of sustainability? Well, as you can see, this is a very important topic, a topic I'm very passionate about, and sustainability is here to stay. It's not going away. And as you could tell from the presentations from Jason Clay and Jeff from McDonald's, they're starting to think about sustainability, the public is starting to think about sustainability, and how we can all fit into that puzzle. And so with this topic of sustainability gaining more momentum, Cargill has received more requests from customers regarding sustainability progress reporting, customer campaigns, NGOs, work groups, initiatives during the past 3 years compared to the 20 years prior. So obviously this idea of sustainability and producing a sustainable product is on people's minds and is becoming more and more important each day. So what is Cargill doing specifically in terms of collaboration and working with other industry groups? Well, customers and NGOs, as I said, they kind of define sustainability differently, and with Cargill, we do operate within a supply chain. And so we have customers and suppliers and retails throughout the entire chain, and we work with all of them. So obviously collaboration is very important. And these are just, this is just an example of how Cargill does fit within a supply chain in the beef industry. So as you can see, we have suppliers, we have our cow-calf customers, the feedlot customers, the feedlot, and then this is where Cargill operates. We have, in Canada, we have our 2 packing plants. One is in High River, Alberta, the other is in Guelph, Ontario. We have 2 platy plants, and then we have our retail and food service customers like McDonald's. So this is where we operate, and we know that we have a sphere of influence and we have a part to play in this puzzle, but as you can see, the entire supply chain needs to be a part of this. So these are just a few examples of where Cargill is collaborating with others on the movement of sustainability. And Jeff went into a little bit of detail on it, and I know Fawn is going to be talking a little bit more about the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. But this is where Cargill is currently a member of. So we're a member of the Roundtable on Responsible Soy, Sustainable Palm Oil, the Sustainability Consortium, the Canadian Roundtable on Sustainable Beef, and more recently we just launched the Canadian Roundtable on Grains and Oilseeds for Sustainability. So we're starting to bring industry together because it is important to us that we understand not just where sustainability is important for Cargill, but where sustainability is important from the producer level and the farm level and the cow-calf operator. So it's really important to bring all these different expertise and experiences together so we do know that we're on the right path towards sustainability. And actually, if you had heard in the Jason Clay video, he talked about how Cargill was working towards sustainable palm oil production, and our company has actually just announced that we'll be sourcing all certified sustainable palm products to our customers and markets across the world by 2020. So since that video was made, that's kind of the progress that Cargill has taken on sustainable palm oil production. So in addition to our industry participation, we also have some key areas that Cargill is focused on. So we are very passionate about environmental sustainability, and people want to know about Cargill's practices and the footprint that we do have. And many people are actually unaware about what Cargill does and how passionate we are about environmental sustainability as part of our operations. So as a company, we have set company-wide environmental goals, and all these goals all these companies' goals are implemented in all of our businesses across all 65 countries that we operate in. So as you can see, the 4 areas are improving energy efficiency by 5%, greenhouse gas intensity by 5%, renewable energy to 12.5% of our energy portfolio, and to improve freshwater efficiency by 5%. So improving energy efficiency is obviously a really key target for us and a goal, and this is actually a really good example of how Cargill has been able to enter into partnerships, both financial and public-private partnerships, and using the science and technology in order to produce better energy efficiency. So what we've done is at our High River plant just outside of Calgary here, is we've been able to convert specified risk materials into energy. So when we talk about things like waste, well, what we're able to do is essentially SRMs were going to landfills before. So now through science and technology, we're able to convert that into energy for our plant, making our plant a lot more energy efficient. It reduces waste going into the landfill. It reduces the amount of costs, and it's a really great success story for the entire value chain. And it also has the potential to be the most sustainable meat plant in North America. So we're very proud about telling this story. So another area is reducing the amount of water we use in our facilities. So obviously water is a key component specifically to meat processing. And we have improved significantly over the past 10 years. So in 2012, Cargill meat facility usage compared to 2011, in our beef processing facilities, we've reduced water by 15%. We've reduced in our pork processing facilities water usage by 18%, and in our turkey processing facilities we've reduced water usage by 9%. So we have come a long way, and we are going to continue to look at ways where we can reduce the amount of resources that we use. So an example that I'd like to show you is our Frank Lake partnership that we've entered into with Ducks Unlimited. Frank Lake is located just outside of High River, just outside Calgary. And it's a huge success story in maintaining our water resources. And so we're able to house a wide variety of wildlife and biodiversity. And so with this partnership, we've significantly invested in putting measures like building dikes and water control structures, building a pipeline from High River to the channel treated from the town and Cargill's meat processing facility. And so we know that this is a great success story, and we do have the ability to continue to improve our environmental footprint and tell these great stories while also working in partnerships with other organizations. So another area that we're focused on is reducing crop yields. So we invest significantly in science and technology to develop new varieties of crop that uses less resources, while at the same time improving crop yields for the farmer. So we work with farmers to develop and implement on-farm solutions that reduce the cost for the farmer, improve crop production, while at the same time improving the footprint on the environment. And Cargill has become very much a leader in this topic. Okay, so as we've looked at what sustainability is, what Cargill is doing, well, we need to know, where is sustainability headed? Well, resource stewardship is critical, and we need to meet the world's population for food and feed, and this requires clean water, soil, and air. So as a global food and agricultural producing company, we recognize that we must learn to produce more while reducing the demands on the environment. So what can we do together? So this is kind of why all of you guys are here. You guys are young leaders. You're going to be leading the topic of sustainability into the future, and we know that we all need to work together. And so we need to collaborate across the entire supply chain, from gate to plate and from farm to fork. We need to collectively tell these great stories and these partnerships that we share, because as was mentioned in a previous presentation, the public doesn't see us as separate entities. They see us as agriculture, or they don't see the feedlot separate from the cow-calf, separate from the processing facility. They see it as one. And so in order to tell the stories that we are doing and to help the public understand that we are producing sustainable products, we need to work on this together. And we need to collaborate and tell these stories, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to inform the public as to the great story that we are telling throughout the value chain. So a question that was brought up was being economically viable. Well, this is very important, and a key area that Cargill focuses in is we know that the different areas do need to be economically viable when we're going towards the path of sustainability. And it needs to be economically viable for the entire value chain. And then the last thing is, we need to collectively determine our aspirational goals. So we need to look at where we do want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, 50 years. This is so important into looking into the future, because we know that we're going to need to develop the science and technology in order to produce the food for 9 billion people. And so we need to continually improve our performance and sustainability using the best practices with the entire agricultural supply chain. And so, as has been said, we are going to have a population of 9 billion people by 2050. And so engaging you guys in agriculture and others is so important to ensuring sustainability of agriculture in the future and telling these great stories. And so as youth leaders, you have the opportunity to participate on this journey and lead the next generation of sustainability. And so I guess this is kind of a takeaway for you guys, is how do you guys encourage the next generation to think about sustainability and to think about agriculture into the future? Because it's so great that you guys are here now, and you know, I'm not going to be here in 100 years, and you guys are going to have the opportunity to start having those discussions and to really drive sustainability and food production in the future. So thank you very much.